Hi, my name is Dan Mumm, Realtor with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. The most common question that I get as a real estate agent is, how much does it cost to sell a house? So the most common question that I get as a realtor is, how much does it actually cost to sell a house? What I think is funny is most realtors assume that people know the answer to this, but if you've never sold a house before, how would you know? A lot of people don't really know how this works. So hopefully this short video helps you in answering that question for you. So the first thing is, it doesn't really cost you anything up front. If you're selling a house, the costs that you incur, you pay those at the closing. So they just get removed from whatever amount the home sells for, less any mortgage debt or mortgage that you have on the property. So you don't really pay anything up front. The only fees that you might pay up front are repairs if you have to do any repairs to the property in your agreement and the offer that you have, or to order any HOA rules and regulations if you live in an area where there's an HOA. And those are very small. Outside of that, you don't really pay anything up front. All of these costs happen at closing. So that's really good and helpful to know for most sellers. So what are the costs? The main cost in selling a house is the commission. Now, commission depends where you live and what the market factors are, but it ranges anywhere between 5 and 7% typically. Also depends on what type of property you're selling, whether it's vacant land or a single family home or a multiple dwelling like a fourplex. That all factors in, but generally it's between 5 and 7%. So that commission is the main factor, and it gets split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent, typically in half. The agent who represents the buyer and you as the seller. One important note here, different agents charge different commission rates, but they also might include different services. So you can't always compare apples to apples. For example, myself, I can pay for staging for my clients. I pay for a mobile notary in case they need to sign and they live out of state. So there's a few factors there that you want to look at carefully. What exactly does the commission include? Some agents charge other fees outside of the commission rate. You want to be careful about that as well. Sometimes they're called broker or administrative fees. So the commission is a major factor. So what else? What else do you pay? So some of the other costs, the closing costs, they total about 1 to 1.5%. So they're much smaller than the commission, and that would be the title and escrow fees, a title policy as a seller, which covers you legally after the house sells. HOA documents, like I mentioned before, if you live in an HOA, you may need to pay for a copy of the rules and regulations for the buyer. Transfer tax, or sometimes tax applies in certain states. And then your mortgage payoff, obviously, whatever amount you owe on the mortgage, you'd have to pay at closing. So that's really it. Typically totals around, we say 8% as a really rough number. Typically costs you about 8% to sell a house. Now, what about if you sell to an investor? A lot of people have asked this question lately with Opendoor and OfferPad and all these different iBuyers, as we call them. How much does it cost if you use them? Because they advertise that there's no commissions or sometimes no fees, but that's not always necessarily true. Typically, if you're selling to an investor, they're going to buy your property at least 10% below market value, and it could be up to 30% below market value. Investors are buying to make a profit, which is normal and understandable, but you won't typically net the most money that way, although it's sometimes a little more convenient because they can close very quickly, and if your house is in very poor condition, they might be able to help you. But outside that, you'll typically net a much higher amount using a realtor traditionally on the real estate market. So that's it. Hopefully that video is helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, my contact information is below, and thanks so much for watching.